Okay, we are live. You guys, welcome. Welcome to 90 Days of Greatness. We are on Hangout number 6. So we're getting close to halfway through, uh, although we're like 1 week behind right now. Okay, so I will catch us up. I promise. I promise I will. We're going to fit it all in. We might need to use some Facebook Live to kind of fill in the gaps. But we will absolutely fit it all in. And actually, speaking of Facebook Live, I do plan on finishing new consultant boot camp, new consultant training, and business debut coaching. I did decide to do that on Facebook Live. I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to do that so that we can catch up a little bit. Okay, so be looking for that sort of mini training session in our Facebook group. And so, funny story, you guys. Just a couple of days ago, I was like, where are my girls at? Where are my DOG girls at? 90 Days of Greatness. Because somehow a setting in my Facebook got turned off that I stopped getting emails and notifications when something was posted in the 90-day group. I'm like, I haven't heard from them. I'm like, what's going on? And then I opened it up. I'm like, there they are. So I was just relieved to see that things are happening in that group and people are moving. You guys are in motion with your book 10. You're in motion this month. You're learning, you're growing, you're stretching. And I was relieved to see that after a few days of not getting any email notifications. I need to get that updated. So topic for today, you guys, is career surveys. And I include in this guests. Okay, so guests and career surveys for you personally, of course, because we're always in the field doing our personal work, but then also the process and system of doing these with your unit. Okay, so if I ever say career survey by itself, just know that guests is a part of what I'm saying and what I'm sharing, career surveys and guests. So it's just sharing the opportunity with your personal people and with your consultants, people that they put you in front of. And so here we go. I want to break down how I strategize this every month, because strategy for the month always brings me to this number, the number of career surveys and guests that I want to do in my unit for the month. Like, I always am clear and know what this number is. In fact, it drives my entire strategy every month by figuring out this number. How many career surveys and guests to meetings and events that I want to have. Or I might sometimes say in front of people, like be in front of people. I use those sort of interchangeably. Okay, so we want to come to this number, and we want to come to this number every single month. And so let me break down how I do this. So you have your goal for the month, and it's a unit production goal. Some people don't like to focus on production. They like to focus on people. Okay, so I get that a lot. Like, it doesn't help me to focus on production. And if that's you, you've got to at least come to a place where you know your production number and your goal. Even if you don't want to focus on production, because that might mentally trip you up a little bit, we've got to at least start with knowing the number. And then once you start with that, you can shift your focus to the activity and to people if that's what you prefer to focus on. But you guys, we are in business. We are businesswomen, savvy businesswomen know their numbers. You guys, so we've got to at least have a starting point for what your unit production goal is that month. Even if your strategy sort of maybe mentally dismisses that, let's start there. Okay, so you've got your goal. Let's use an easy, nice round number, 10,000 wholesale. Okay, that is your goal. Then you have what your base unit does on average. It is not helpful to look at an average of anything less than 6 months, because our business works in cycles. We've got big months and low months, but we need an average. What can you count on your base? And your base unit is your order plus everybody else that's already in the unit. So the only people it doesn't include is the new people you're going to add. So what can you count on your base unit to do on average? There is a report that shows you this on InTouch in the report section. It says new. So capital, all capital NEW, new, and unit analysis report is I believe is what it's called. It's not new, it's been around for years. But it gives you a 6-month average of what just your base unit does. Okay, important number to know. Okay, so you've got your 10,000 goal, and then you've got your base unit, let's just say doing 5,000, just to keep it on with easy, even numbers. And 5,000 is a 6-month or more average. I always looked at a year-long average with this tracking spreadsheet that I've always used for years. So I always knew at any point in the year what our long-term average was. I could even go back to previous years and see other seminar years what our average was. Okay, so what does that leave that's missing? It means you need to find 5,000. Goal is 10,000. You can count on 5,000 coming in. You've got to find that 5,000. And so that's what we're creating strategy for, is how do you find it? And so the way you find it, you guys, is, well, the main way you're going to find it is with new people, okay? So you can work to increase this 5,000, and that's a part of the strategy too, you guys. So that's working with your key people. That's working the bracelet program to have lots of 600 wholesale orders going in. That's working the STAR program so that people are building towards their STAR each month. So there's always systems to increase this 5,000. We're going to cover some of those things later in the program. Okay, so there's ways to increase the 5. I'm going to talk today about finding what you don't see. And let me start by saying this. Okay, this 5,000 on average, there is a way to get, in my opinion, a more clear number than even your average. And Linda Tupin teaches this. It's called projecting your production. And it's where you pull up a report that shows a 6-month ordering pattern of your entire unit. And Linda Tupin says to cover up the names and just look at their pattern, and then that pattern will tell you what she'll most likely order that month. I've always just looked at the names because, you know, you kind of know what's going on with those people in their lives and the likelihood of them ordering or not, regardless of their pattern. So I always just looked at their names and put a number beside every single person in my unit, whether it was 0 or 100 or 225 or 400 or 600 or 650 or 1,000. I put a number by them. And a conservative number, because you never want to think you have something that you don't. So it was always a very conservative guess. So for example, maybe your base does 5,000, but here in February, it's a new product ordering month. And so in a new product ordering month, usually you can expect that your base would do a little bit more because people are investing in ordering the new products. Okay, so to get a more clear number than just what your average is in February, you would just look at everyone and guess how much you think they're going to order. Okay, so but like I said, we're going to talk about just what you need to find, because usually like what your goal is and what you think your base can do, there's going to leave some left over. And so that's going to come from new people coming in. So let's just say you need to find 5,000 in production. I always think about that with stars and qualifieds. So when I think of 5,000, I'm thinking of like 2 to 3 stars. So let's round it up and say 3. Like 3 stars and or qualifieds would need to come in to bring in that production. So then I know I need to bring in 3 stars. The next thing or number you need to figure out is how many agreements do you need to bring in to add 3 stars. And this is an important number to track. You could look back at past numbers and past reports to figure this out if you don't know this off the top of your head. But I did track this, like how many agreements we brought in versus how many people started as a star. And mine was usually always around 1/3. Give or take. Okay, so about 1/3 of the people coming in started with a star inventory level. Again, you may need to do some research and look back at maybe the past 6 months if you don't know your number off the top of your head. Okay, there's ways to look that up. And so if I need 3 stars, you multiply that by 3, and that's 9 people. And the way I like to do it is I like nice round even numbers. So I would just bump it up to 10, 10 new agreements, because remember, that's growth. And so I'd bump that up to 10, and that would be the goal. We want to add 10 new people this month. So then that helps you to determine how many career surveys and guests, or essentially how many people you need to be in front of to add the 10. Now, to figure out that number, you would need to know your unit recruiting average. There is no report for this. There is nothing on InTouch that can help you figure this out except tell you how many new people you've brought in. This is something I've always tracked on a spreadsheet. I always tracked how many career surveys and guests to meeting that we had and how many new people we were bringing in. And I always updated our unit recruiting number, or our average, each month on the spreadsheet. So at any point in the year, I could see, okay, we are recruiting, 1 out of every 3.2 people we share the opportunity with. Okay. My most consistent average after I got really good at this skill was about 1 out of every 4. And so I knew that if we needed 10 new agreements, 1 out of every 4, that is 40. I need to do 40 career surveys and or guests to meetings and events to add our 10. And 1/3 of them will come in as stars to find the production I need to finish my goal. Okay. So every single month I was looking for those career surveys and guests. Okay. So then you don't stop there. You don't stop there. A lot of people stop there, but there's still really no strategy in place yet. You guys, you need to do 40. But if you just go through the month and knowing you need to do 40 and stopping at that place, then you have a disability working through the month. Like your strategy is only halfway done. Okay, so that's when I would look at my month at a glance, and I would literally pull up my month at a glance, February, and I would sit there and look at it, and I would estimate or guess how many people I was on track to be in front of. Okay, so let me explain this and break this down. Okay, so there are 4 Tuesdays in February. And I would know on average how many guests come to our meeting. And you probably know your average. Even if you haven't tracked it, you could probably guess like, we have about X amount of guests on average come to our meeting. So let's just say 5, okay? So 5, 10, 15, 20. All right, that's 20 people right there that you're on target to be in front of. And then let's say you have 2 guest events, and you know your average of amount of people who typically attend a guest event. And then let's say you have a couple of business debuts, and you know that it's your standard to set up at least 5 career surveys at those business debuts. And so you know you're going to be in front of those people or do career surveys with those people. And then you've got your own personal parties in there. And you know that you ask at least 2 people at every party to do a career survey or whatever your number is. And so then you've got those numbers. And then you've got maybe any Saturday events. And then you've got your key people. You've got Sally and Susie who want to be DIQs. So they're probably going to do at least 5 career surveys. I mean, really, they should do like 20, but we're doing a conservative estimate. And so you put a number by them. And then you've got these 5 new people from January that you're working with to earn their pearls. Let's say 2 of them earn their pearls of sharing. Then that means they're doing 5 career surveys and having 5 guests to the meeting. Okay, do you see how I'm going through all of the potential people you could be in front of to come up with a number? Okay, so let's say out of the 40 I need, I can see 30. And again, conservatively, you would never want to think you have something there that you don't. So remember I said maybe you had 5 people that you recruited in January. I wouldn't count on all 5 of them doing their pearls of sharing. Now, would that be awesome? And are you going to work with them and coach them that all 5 of them would complete their pearls of sharing? Yes. But we're doing a conservative estimate. So we're going to say 2 are going to finish. And, you may have the other 3 do a little bit, but let's just say 2 are going to finish. And that's what I would probably guess or project when I'm going through this. Okay, so let's say you need 40, but you can only see 30. So you need to find 10 people and get things in motion now on the front end of the month to find those 10 people. And so how do you do that? There's so many ways you can do that. The most easy, obvious way is just add more parties to your personal date book. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Another way that I do this is to rally my key people. Let's say you have like a good group of working people. I'd pull them away into a Voxer group separately. I would name it something fun like Fabulous Five or something like that. And then I would share with them the goal like, okay, guys, our goal this month is to do 40 career surveys. I see almost all of them, but we're a little bit short in what I'm projecting that we're on target to do. And so I pulled you guys into this group because I know you've got goals and I know you're focused. And so um, how many can you contribute, or how many is your goal to contribute to our unit goal of hitting 40? And you just have them say like, I'll do 5, I'll do 10. And so you're rallying your key people and your working people to have a very clear career survey and guest goal on the front end of the month. Okay. And then you write that down and you follow up and you follow through with them and inspect what you expect. And then you celebrate as you go. I'd have a thermometer that counts up to 40, and I'd be filling it in and posting it and doing recognition with like, Sally had 2 guests at the meeting last night. Lindsay had 1. Stephanie had 5. And you would celebrate who's contributing to that 40. Another way is working with your new people, doing pearls of sharing. Another way is to coach your meeting. And we're going to get into that in the next couple of weeks, I think next week, on how to actually coach your meeting so that you can show up and there are guests there, your own personal guests and your unit members' guests. So that's another thing you can really intentionally do. And so there's any number of ways to find those 10 that you need. And then that helps you to know on the front end of the month, okay, here's what I need to focus on. Here's what I need to put into motion. Here's who I need to coach and communicate with to do those 40 or more and to find what you feel like you're lacking on the front end of the month. Versus, I think a lot of people just go through the month hoping they'll magically be in front of more people, hoping they'll magically hit those 10 new agreements without any real like solid strategy behind that goal. Okay. And so being in front of people, you guys, it feeds everything that we do. It creates growth in every area of our business. Being in front of people, sharing the product, sharing the opportunity, it's essentially what we do. If you had to break down what we do as a Mary Kay sales director, what would you break it down to if you just had to explain it in the most simple way? We're in front of people. We talk to people. That's what we do. We talk to people about the product and the business. And we do that in a variety of different ways. And so we just got to talk to more people. We got to find more people. And there's this magical thing of knowing what you're looking for because you find what you're looking for. The universe has a way of giving you what you expect. You create in your reality what you're expecting and looking for in your mind. And so those 10 extra people, they're out there. There's more than 10. They're out there. We're not in front of them, not because they're not ready for us to be in front of them or they're not available for us to be in front of them. We're not in front of them because we're not looking well enough. We're not looking closely enough. Okay, so when you learn a new word, all of a sudden you start seeing that word in multiple places in books and newspapers and magazines. Or when you start driving a new car or buy a new car or earn a new car, all of a sudden you see that car everywhere you go. Or I remember the first time I was pregnant, all of a sudden I started seeing these pregnant ladies everywhere. And so those words, those cars, those pregnant ladies were always there. You just weren't looking for them. You just weren't aware that they were there. Okay, same with those people. Those 40 people that you need to be in front of, those 10 extra that you need to find, they're there. They're just waiting for you to find them. Okay, they're there. We have to intentionally put ourselves in front of them. Okay. And so this was like my one thing strategy, and being in front of people was like it was my one thing. And I didn't know it at the time because I hadn't read that book yet. Are you guys loving this book? It's so good. I hadn't read the book at that point in my career as a sales director, but it's essentially what I did. I operated with that being the one thing. It was the thing I gave the most energy to, at least 4 hours a day of being in front of people. Now, every day looked a little bit different, but that was the goal, the focus, the intention. That's where my energy was going, was just putting myself in front of people and doing the work it took and the intention that it took to do that on a regular, consistent basis. Okay. And so, systems and tracking, you guys, let's touch on that. I started tracking this with a paper spreadsheet. It had 12 boxes on it. And it's just this very simple Excel spreadsheet. And in those boxes, I put the name of the person, her phone number, how I met her. So if she was at a party, I put like the party and her hostess, like who she was connected to. If I met her at a debut, I would write that down and whose debut it was. If she was at a meeting, I would write that down because I wanted to know where she was coming from and where I met her. And then I would put her interest level on a scale of 1 to 10 because we always, every person I was in front of, I always knew, whether it was my party, our meeting, a business debut, they were always filling out a version of the party sheet. I didn't use that when I was a sales director, but it's sort of the updated version of what I use. So I always knew her interest level on a scale of 1 to 10. Anybody 6 and higher, man, that got highlighted. So it would pop out to me as I'm going through these. And then any other notes that I wanted to add went in this spreadsheet. So eventually I went paperless maybe halfway through my directorship and got an iPad and started using more spreadsheets on an iPad. So either way, whether you use paper or an iPad, the iPad version is in your workbook. It's career survey tracking, and it's just got just little boxes that you fill in for who you're in front of. So the day after my meeting, I have all the guest sheets that I've collected, and I collected every single one. Okay, consultants did not leave with their guest sheets. I left with their guest sheets. So I sat down with the sheets, got my binder out, and I filled in the boxes. After every party, filling in the boxes. After every business debut, I left with the guest sheets, filling in the boxes. So I have everybody's name. I've got her phone number. I've got her interest level on a scale of 1 to 10. I filled in my boxes. Okay, and so at the top of each of the pages, so let's say February, on page number 1, I would have 12 in the top right-hand corner. And then I would flip the page and I'd have 24. I'd flip the page, I'd have 36. So I counted up by 12 so that at any point in the month, there's probably a better way to do this, but this is just how I did it. At any point in the month, I could see exactly how many people I was in front of at that point. Now the spreadsheet has numbers, so that's numbered for you. And so I always knew who I was in front of. And so let me back up. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So I use that to track it. And then there's also the 15-day tracking in the 90 Days of Power workbook. Okay, so that's our goal setting workbook that walks you through every quarter of the Mary Kay year, and it helps you to work your business in 90-day cycles. We're going to do training on it at the very end of this program. And in there, there's a 15-day tracking sheet. It says I can do anything for 15 days. And in the bottom left-hand corner is a spot to track how many people you're in front of. Now, I would not use that. I would just use that to see a number. I would use the spreadsheet version to have information on her. You could even use the 15 days of tracking, like you could just check people off. So you always know your number at any point in the month. So let's say my goal was 200. I want to be in front of 200 people in February. I would know that by the 15th, I should have about 100 filled out. at that point. So you want to like make sure you're on track with how many that as you progress through the month, make sure you're on track to be in front of that goal or that number. Okay. So let me talk about my boxes. I want to give you some more emotional management tips and training, because my boxes, especially as a newer director and earlier on in my journey, those boxes are those lines on this spreadsheet. Every single one of them was a win to me. Even the ones who had an interest level of 0 out of 10. They were all a win to me. And I let them be a win too. That's another thing. You guys are getting wins every day and all day, and you may not be letting it be a win. Okay, does that make sense? Like, I got little small wins and I let it be a win. I let it be a sense of victory. I let it feel like I was getting closer to my goal. And that's what those boxes and lines were to me, because it's, again, what do we essentially do? We are essentially in front of people. We talk to people. Even phone conversations too, you guys, those went on my spreadsheet too, the on the phone career surveys, and of course in-person career surveys. And so we talked to people. And so I knew that really with every box I filled in with a new person's name, regardless of who she was or what her interest level was, I knew that I was one step closer to NSD. And I truly just let myself believe that, and I wrapped my arms around that every box I filled out, I was one step closer to my goal. I was one step closer to NSD. And so regardless of what the scoreboard looked like, regardless of what I liked happening in my unit or what I did not like happening, regardless of what went wrong that day, regardless of who quit, regardless of who didn't return my phone call, regardless of who didn't order inventory that I thought was going to order inventory, regardless of, who stopped working her business, it didn't matter. All I could control were the boxes. All I could wrap my hands around that I could truly, truly control was who I put myself in front of. Everything else out here was outside of what I could control. And so I just wrapped my hands around what I could control. And like when I say wrapped my hands around, you guys, I mean, I like wrapped my hands around it and like sunk my nails into it and sunk my teeth into it. And I just held it tightly and I shook it for all it was worth, because that's all I could control. Put myself in front of people, put myself in front of people, put myself in front of people. It doesn't matter what's happening out here. I let it roll off. Didn't matter. Shook it off because I had to stay in my zone. Okay, and my zone was just what I can control. And so if I knew at the end of every day that I was just doing what I could do and controlling what I can control and walking in obedience in the best way that I knew to that day to contribute growth to my goal, then if I finished the day and knew that I did that, then what else can I do? It didn't matter what else happened that day because I was doing what I could do. And I really let the rest be in God's hands. And surrendered the results and surrendered my emotions toward it, whether they were good or bad. I let it go and surrendered it. And so how I see a lot of directors work is they're out here trying to control all this and getting really worked up and distracted and frustrated with all of this. I'm like, hold on, you can't control that. You got to get here. Okay, so a lot of leaders are out here and this is being sacrificed on the altar of what's going on out here. Okay, we got to stop being so distracted with things we can't control and sink our teeth into what we can control. And let those things be wins. Let the boxes, let every person be a win, knowing that you're one step closer to your goal. Even if it doesn't look like it or feel like it, you are. Okay, and believe that. So your task this week is to decide a system for tracking your career surveys and guests. So whether it's the spreadsheet in the workbook or something else you want to use, you could just grab a piece of blank notebook paper and with a pencil write people's names down. Okay, so this doesn't have to be anything fancy, but there's something to this, you guys. There's something very, very powerful to your focus and intention on being in front of people. and talking to people. And so the biggest game changer in my business, I believe, so we're like 1 week behind. So you know that like the tasks are meant to go along with the training that I'm doing. So since we're 1 week behind, you wouldn't have been expected to do that task last week. It's going to be a this week task, just in case that's a question. I wanted to clear that up. And so let me share with you a really big game changer in my business. I think I've alluded to this, or at least I've touched on this. Let me tell you the short version here, just to save a little bit of time. It was early on in my business. Yeah, I think I've told you the story. So let me just review. It was after our first full year. We had a couple of offspring. We earned the top directorship. And my meeting just went from like an okay meeting. It wasn't an awesome meeting. It was like an okay meeting to like just a lame meeting with very low attendance. And by low, I mean no one. And that time I was meeting in a Panera community room. And so I would park and like I had to go in 3 or 4 times to schlep all my stuff in. And we live in Ohio. And so it was often in the dark, in the snow, in the rain, in the cold. And I would set it all up and then I would wait, and it was crickets. And this happened maybe 3 times in a row, 3 weeks in a row of nobody at the meeting. And I'm like, okay, this is a big waste of my time. I've got to do something. You guys, I considered canceling the meeting. I thought about it. I'm like, well, I'll book it again. I'll schedule it when I have people who want to come. Okay. I knew in my heart that wasn't the right answer. I knew in my heart that the only answer for a leader is to take personal responsibility. And so that's what I chose to do. And I started inviting guests to my meeting. And I started that night, and I started with my customers because I had oodles and oodles and oodles and oodles of customers who had never been to my meeting. Because as a director, I thought it was too much to handle. I'm like, I've got my people, I've got their people, I've got training, I've got recognition, I've got too much to do, I've got too much going on. And so I really, as a newer director, didn't invite people to my meeting because I felt like it was too much mental multitasking and too much chaos. And so I finally got to a point where I was just going to embrace the chaos, and I was okay with the chaos. And I did hire a meeting assistant too, which helped with the chaos, but it was also still just a little bit wild. It was like a wild 2-hour time of my week because there's just so much going on, and my brain is trying to keep track of all of it and plan it. And it's just a lot going on. Oh, well, just give it your all for 2 hours of the, of the week, and just embrace the chaos a little bit. Have fun with it. And so I embraced the chaos and started with my customers and invited them to my meeting. And I used the before and after model portfolio script. That's what they were coming to be a part of. I would take before and after pictures and have them printed in this big portfolio that I have. And that's how it started. And so I don't want to paint any romantic pictures about what happened after that, because what happened after that is I had a skincare class at my meeting with no consultants there. And then I did that again the next week. And I did that again the next week. I had a skincare class, a party, a beauty experience, if you will, at my meeting with no consultants. Doesn't sound very magical, and it was not. It wasn't. It was a party with no consultants at my meeting. But then I started recruiting them and slowly started bringing some new people into my unit, and they would come to the meeting. Yay. But that's almost even more awkward, because then it's like you're having a party and you have like one person there. She got to watch me do a party. Best training she could ever have. And then there started to be 2 people, and then sometimes 3. And then they started to bring guests. This was months later. Actually, I don't know. Maybe it was just 1 or 2, or maybe it wasn't. I don't know. I don't know how fast it grew. But months later, they started bringing people. And then I started recruiting them. And then slowly they started bringing people. And we started recruiting them. Okay. 2 years later, yes, I did say 2 years. I said 2 years. We had a standing room only meeting. We were breaking fire code. We had to keep moving locations because we couldn't fit in. I could tell you so many hilarious stories about us trying to fit all these guests into a room that was absolutely too small. It was ridiculous, actually. And it became this rockin' awesome meeting where I was in front of 30 guests and like 50 consultants in one night. Okay, it went from my lame skincare class and me in front of like a group of 4 people to like 30 guests to the meeting and in front of like 60 or so consultants. And that's what it grew into. And the last 7 directors to finish our national area came out of that meeting. And they were all recruited at that meeting. The meeting I almost canceled 2 years before. And so my point with this is, well, I have a lot of points, and one is to take personal responsibility. And the other is to understand the power of bringing your own personal guests to meeting and what you can actually create. Because also the very first year I got committed to doing that, I earned the B, and then I earned it again the second year. We debuted as a national area that third year. Okay, so understand the power of you really intentionally doing personal recruiting. And the meeting was the easiest way for me to do it because they got to see the energy and the excitement and actually, no, even before that, you guys, you're just intentionally using that night of the week really, really well. And yeah, and it's going to grow. And so the year before I earned my first B, I noticed that I was doing about 7, I think it was 7 or 8 personal career surveys and guests on average. So I was usually doing a power start, and I was usually doing 7 or 8, which, gosh, is like really low in my mind right now to reflect on that. And I was doing about a half a B for my first 2 or 3 years as a director. And I figured, okay, if I'm doing 7 or 8 and finishing about 12 personal qualifieds, I'll just bump it up to 15 and finish my 24. And that is exactly what happened. My average was about 15 personal guests and career surveys per month, which produced the 24 qualified to earn my first National Court of Sharing, ranked number 5 in the Pearl Seminar. And I was ranked so high because I just consistently did it all year long. Like it was pretty much 2 personal qualifieds every single month is what I was doing. I was just tracking it really consistently. And when that happens, all those people recruited on the front end of the year, all their orders after that just add up your commissions. And then, of course, your commissions are how you're ranked once you finish the 24 qualified. And so, guys, that was the biggest game changer. I often look back at that moment, that quiet, private moment, that pivotal moment, and think, man, what if I would have canceled that meeting? Like, whoa, I'm so glad I didn't cancel that meeting. I was sitting in Panera by myself, looking at a meeting room completely set up with nobody in it, and decided I've got to change this. And my only answer was personal responsibility and to lead by example. It's the most foundational yet the most violated principle of leadership is lead by example. Okay, so that of course impacted my one thing so greatly, you guys. By committing to the guest to meeting and letting that grow over time, I could go to a meeting and knock out 30 people, be in front of 30 people, you guys, at one night in a 2-hour time frame. Be in front of 30 people. Think about that for a minute. So what that allows you to do is just recruit a whole heck of a lot more people because you're using that 2-hour time frame so effectively. And then you do it again the next week and the next week and the next week and the next month and the next month. You see how like the numbers can grow. And so then you're just recruiting a ton of new people, which is contributing a ton of new production. And then the leaders emerge. I truly attribute it to a very strong portion of how we built our national area was that commitment of having guests to the meeting and being in front of lots of people. Okay, it drove everything in my directorship and us building a national area. I mean, almost everything. Okay, so let's move on to the interview process. I'm just going to do a little bit of training on this just as a refresher for you guys, because I know you know how to share the opportunities. So it's going to be a refresher for you, but I more want to give you wording to start training your consultants and equipping them to be really effective at sharing the opportunity. Okay, so I'm going to weave back and forth from like kind of director training and how to implement this system to like, let's make sure our consultants know this so that they're effectively sharing the opportunity. I'm going to kind of move back and forth between that, okay? So the interview process, or more broadly, like just the sharing the opportunity process. There are 4 musts at a party, 4 absolute, you've got to do them at a party when it comes to sharing the opportunity. And I train my new consultants on this. It's your I story. It's marketing. The way we do that is the ticket game, which is on our flip chart, or the purse game. Now it's the ticket game because some people don't carry purses around. And so we started calling it the ticket game. And then feedback, where you're actually asking questions about the opportunity and allowing them to talk about it around the table. We do that on the party sheet, where you're actually asking, what's most attractive about the Mary Kay opportunity? On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your interest level? If you're not a 10, what would have to change or happen to move, to get to a 10 or to be a higher number? Because you're getting their feedback. It's a very important part of the party. And then you're booking career surveys and guests during the individual consultation. These 4 things like have to happen. And I drill that into my new consultants so they're not just going and selling. Because that's kind of the easier thing. And sometimes the tendency is people just go and sell. You want them to know how to share and share effectively as well. So during the career survey, we're essentially just finding a need and wanting to fill it. It's really what we are doing. You guys, you want to find a need and fill it. And I'm pulling up a document here that I want to look at. Okay. And we're just supporting her and leading her to finding the fit and to find out if what she values and wants out of her life aligns with what our company could offer her. That's what we're trying to find. Like, is what you want out of your life, or is your value systems, what you're looking for, is any need in your life aligning with what the Mary Kay opportunity can offer to you? I love thinking about it in that way, and even saying that, like, we're just trying to see if this is a fit for you. And if it's a fit, we're super excited. And if it's not, that's okay. Like, I just kind of want to see if it's a fit for what you need in your life right now. Okay, that's essentially what the interviewing process is. Doesn't that take the weirdness away from it sometimes, or the pressure, or the fear of being pushy? When you think about it like that, like, I want to see if it's a fit for you. Okay, so understanding DISC, you guys, I really briefly train on this on my during my new consultant training, is DISC, because you want your consultants to have a working knowledge of it. Although I think it takes a lot of experience with it to fully understand DISC. You at least want them to like know about it from their new consultant training. And that's a topic that's always just really fun and easy to go back to, is DISC. And it's important in recruiting because people skills are important in recruiting. And when you can understand DISC, I think it increases your people skills like immediately, because you're understanding where people are coming from, you're understanding what they're motivated by, you're understanding what would drive them a little bit more when you can just have even a cursory understanding of the DISC personality profile. And we use this not to label people, but to understand how to best serve her and to speak her language. Okay, so D is for Dutch, I is for Italian, S is for Spanish, and C is for Cantonese. Um, DISs and Cs speak a different language. And when we can understand the language she speaks, communication is more effective. Okay. And when communication is effective, people feel comfortable. Their trust level increases. They feel like they're being heard and honored and served in the conversation when you're speaking their language. When you're not speaking their language, there's like a disconnect. There's a weird disconnect. And so that's why we talk about DISC and want to understand DISC, is so we can speak people's language. Here's a question I ask that will help you to know pretty easily if she's DIS or C. When she asks a question, sometimes I'll return that question with like, well, tell me, like, would you prefer like a brief overview? A little bit more information than a brief overview, or do you just like want all the details? Okay. So I ask that, and if she's like, oh girl, just give me a brief overview, I mean, she's probably a D or an I. If she's like, well, give me a little bit more than a brief overview. And then if she asks for all the details, like more than likely she's a C and a strong C. Okay, so if someone asks, well, how do you earn a free car in Mary Kay? Okay, that's a loaded question. There's a lot to that, you know? And so sometimes with those types of questions, I'll ask, well, hey, like, do you want a brief overview, just like the bullet points? Do you want a little bit more information than that? Or do you like want all the details? Because here's what happens. If you start to tell a D personality all the details, they're like, good golly, never mind. Like, just get to the point, cut to the chase, get to the point. They start to get annoyed. Okay, so you don't want people annoyed when you're sharing the business opportunity. You don't want them like looking at their watch, wanting to hang up the phone. Okay, a D just wants bullet points, girl. Give me just bullet points. And so we've got to understand that and use that when we're communicating with people about the opportunity. Okay, there's a career survey guide in your workbook. And this is something I created after I went to DSWA coaching school. There's a big chunk of that coaching school that goes over how to understand DISC and how to use it when sharing the opportunity. And so let me just talk through a couple bullet points. Let me give you a brief overview here, because you guys can look at this later, and I know you guys know a lot of this stuff. So here's some brief bullet points. And so this career survey guide would be wonderful to train on at your meeting. And maybe not new consultants, because I feel like they don't need that much information yet. They're still working on their I story and how to do the ticket game. They're still working on the more basic skills of sharing the opportunity. This is sort of a more advanced version of when people start to really do career surveys and start to really get in front of more people at their parties, and you want them feeling comfortable sharing the information and doing their own career surveys. Although I have my new people and even some of my seasoned people do them with me. So anyways, this is a great thing to train on at your meeting. And of course, we want to ask open-ended questions. And so open-ended questions start with who, what, where, when, and how. So you want to avoid yes or no questions, because it just closes off the conversation. Okay, you want to ask open-ended questions because you're going to get more information. And we create objections with close-ended questions. So I'm trying to think of an example. Yeah, anyways, open-ended questions. That's the point. Also, people do not object to their own answers. They object to our statements. So we have to start learning to ask more questions and not interjecting our statements. So let me give you an example of this. Let's say at your meeting, you have a sharp woman there who's a mom and maybe works a career and is out of the home 40 hours a week. And so I've seen this happen. I am guilty of this, of saying something like, well, yeah, girl, you should do Mary Kay so you can be home with those babies. Statement. You just gave her a statement. And you could have just completely offended her. She may not want to be home with them. You don't know that. Or she may have a lot of guilt that she's not and feels like you just like shined a light on that guilt that she's not at home with them. Okay? So um, you see how projecting our value system onto people by making statements like we value being home with the babies, but we can't project that on other people or make statements like that. So we ask questions. What do you enjoy the most about your career? What's one thing you could change if you could change anything? Okay, so those types of questions allow her to make the statements. And people don't object to what they say, they only object to what we say. So we've got to stop making statements and projecting our values on people and ask more questions. Okay, we want to find a need and fill it. We want to talk 20% of the time and listen 80%. That's just a good rule of thumb to follow. If you find yourself talking too much, like zip it, ask another question, get her talking. Okay. And then here's a mindset shift for me that I learned at coaching school is I've always talked about closing a prospect. I mean, still to this day, I've had a hard time switching to better languaging with this. Closing a prospect is like getting the yes decision, getting the agreement. But in coaching school, they talk about opening up a relationship of trust. So instead of closing a prospect, you're opening up a relationship with a new consultant. Okay? Wouldn't you rather open up a relationship than close something? And so that's just some languaging to get ourselves in the right mindset when sharing the opportunity. And then the career survey guide, after those bullet points that I shared with you, it gives some just good questions to ask during a career survey. And you wouldn't necessarily ask all of them, but it gives you a good sampling of just great questions to ask to find what she values, to get her talking about herself, to maybe pull out her need, and just to have a really effective conversation. Okay. Also in your packet is an outline that Pam Shaw created a couple of years ago. This was after she attended coaching school, and it's just a sample outline of a career survey and when to ask questions and what questions to ask. Again, that might be really effective to train your consultants on, or at least your key people and your recruiters on just, and maybe even doing like a mock interview and following that script and talking about it and training on it as you go through that script. So that's in your packet as a resource for you. So now I want to talk about boldly closing or opening relationships with new consultants and just make a couple of points here. We might go a little bit over today, guys, but I want to get this all in. The first thing I want to talk about is inverse paranoid. And I believe it's Darren Hardy who talks about that. You know, often we're paranoid about the bad things that could happen, or we're imagining, you know, the worst that could happen, or we're imagining what she's thinking about us, and we're imagining it in a possibly negative way. Okay, and so he trains on reversing that and being inverse paranoid. So instead of being paranoid about all the bad things that could happen, you start being paranoid or fixated on the good that could come of it. You guys, this transformed my career surveys, especially in a season when I was just doing a lot of them. You know, so I was on the phone, I was in front of people talking about the opportunity so much that it sort of got monotonous and got a little bit mundane. And sometimes I would just, I mean, I could like bake a 4-course meal while having a career survey conversation, because, you know, you're just used to the flow of it and you've got the questions memorized and you just get good at them. And when you get good at them, the danger is that you go through the motions. And so I started training myself that a minute before I would jump on a phone call or be in front of someone, I would imagine what it could be for her. I would imagine her coming to me a year later and saying, "Thank you for sharing this opportunity. It's changed my life." I would imagine her saying to me on the phone, "I have been praying for something like this, and I feel like I've found it." I would imagine her picking up a free car at a dealership with her family there with her. I would imagine her debuting on stage as a new sales director. I would imagine all these things, you guys. And so I would go into the conversation with that sort of mindset. And, you know, it just makes you that much more intentional, that much more effective, that much more tuned in to like, could this be the person who I'm going to watch pick up a free car with her family someday? Like, could this be her? I want to find out if it is. versus just doing one more career survey and going through the motions. See how that kind of sets your mindset in the right frame of mind? And now, does that always happen? No, not even close, not even close. We get more no's than we do yeses. So it's not even close to always happening. But what did it cost you to imagine that it would? What did it cost you? Nothing. It cost you a minute of just thinking it through and getting yourself in the right mindset. But what is it worth to you? You guys, it's invaluable to go into conversations with that kind of mindset. It's the difference between getting a yes or not. I really believe that. It's the difference between having an effective conversation and building trust with her or not. Okay. I'm sure you all have heard of feel, felt, found. You know, when somebody gives you an objection, you say like, oh yeah, I know how you feel. I felt the same way too. And then you tell a story all about you. And then you say, well, I found that. And then you tell a story all about you. It's an old school sales technique that is outdated. And I hope you have heard or learned somewhere along the line that it's not effective anymore. And so instead of feel, felt, found, you learn to validate someone. You validate them. And validating is just simply agreeing. She's giving you an objection and you literally just agree with it. We're going to go through a few examples in just a minute. Okay, and so when I say closing someone, I mean that moment. You know that moment when like you ask her if she wants to do Mary Kay, if she wants to start a Mary Kay business. That moment comes on the phone. It comes at in person over coffee. That moment comes at your meeting, or at least it should. It should come at your meeting. I am like always shocked to hear when directors aren't asking for a yes or no decision. We've got to be asking. You do not have because you do not ask. Okay, we've got to be asking for that yes or no decision. So that moment when you're going to ask and she's going to respond, we've got to get really good at that moment of sensing when that moment is coming or is going to happen, and seizing that moment, and also knowing how to respond based on what she shares with you. Okay, so it's just a lot of intuition, you guys. It's a lot of intuition, which comes from a lot of experience. It's a lot of like noticing her tone of voice if you're on the phone. If you're with her in person, it's understanding her body language. If she's crossed or if she's open, if her shoulders are down or if they're back and strong and confident, if she's looking you in the eye or if she's here, you know, that tells a lot about a person if she can't look you in the eye. If she's looking at her watch, if she's checking her phone, if she's looking at the door, if she's like here with you, like here, listening, open, ready. Okay, so we got to start picking up on those things because those are all clues with how far you can go with some people. If you've got someone here, like ready with you, listening, girl, you can push them. I mean, that's you can open a relationship with a new consultant, and you better, if she's here, opening, listening, ready, she's ready to sign an agreement. And so as the leader, you lead her to that. You open that relationship right there on the spot. You do not send her home to think about it. Okay, you open the relationship right then and there. If she's like, you got to sense that and you pull back a little bit. If you sense she's pulling back, you don't like pounce on her. You pull back a little bit and you have mastered the layering process. And so you continue the layering process. I heard a helpful analogy once of a mosquito and a butterfly. Okay. So there's the mosquito, there's the butterfly. They're both bugs. They both fly around your face and like bug you because they're bugs. Okay. A mosquito, if a mosquito lands on you, what do you instinctively, without thinking about it, do? You smack it. You don't ever like sit there and look at the mosquito or observe it or enjoy it. No, you want to kill it. Okay, a butterfly's flitting around you. They're in your face. They're a bug. But oh my goodness, if it lands on you, you sit, you look at it. It's pretty. You enjoy it. You study it. because it's polite and it's pretty and it's nice. Nobody would ever dream of like smacking a butterfly away if a butterfly lands on them. Okay, so when sharing the opportunity, we are the butterfly, okay? And we cannot be the scary K lady, the mosquito. We are the butterfly. And so, yes, we're going to bug her. We're going to get in her face because we are clear about our intentions. We're not playing hide and seek. We're not pretending to not want to recruit her. We are being direct in our communication, but in a butterfly way. We're pretty and we're nice and we fly around and we gently land on her. We flit around in her face. We don't buzz in her face. We kind of just, we're pretty. Okay? So we're the butterfly. You guys, and when we're butterflies, people are open. They're open to hearing what we say. When we are mosquitoes, they are closed. They want to smack us away. Okay, so we've always got to be the butterfly. And you want to train your consultants on the mosquito and the butterfly as well. Okay, most people need a push. Okay, did I tell my story of when Tina recruited me? I mean, she pushed me because I was pushable. I wasn't offended. I wasn't pulling back. I was pushable, so she pushed me. I needed a push. She made me come to her house and order the starter kit. I would have kept avoiding it. I was busy. I didn't have time to like get online and fill out an agreement. I'll do that later. Okay, I needed a push. Come to my house and fill it out. Like, okay, I'll do that. Like I needed that push. And then I told her the next day that I wanted to quit and return my starter kit. And she lied to me that you can't return the starter kit at that point. I needed that push. I needed that pressure. Okay, some of you are way too worried about being too pushy or like worried about that. And if you're super worried about that, I just think it's people skills. It's intuition. It's learning to read people and learning to push when appropriate in a butterfly sort of way and pull back when appropriate. Okay, it comes from just being in front of a lot of people and gaining that people intuition. At your meeting, you want to work with crazy urgency. Well, anytime you're sharing the opportunity, you want to work with urgency. We too easily default to, well, let me follow up with you. Now, sometimes that's appropriate, and the layering process is our friend. And sometimes it does take a lot of follow-up, but I think we're letting a lot of people who are ready off the hook because it's too comfortable to ask, or it's too comfortable to like say, girl, you got to do this. It's time. Like it's time. Okay, so crazy sense of urgency, the mindset of closing people who are ready or opening up a relationship. Let's do a little bit more on validating, you guys, and then I'm going to close with just a few statements that I use a lot during when I'm opening a relationship. Okay, so validating. Somebody says like, I'm just too busy. This sounds awesome. You know, maybe another time when I'm not as busy, but I'm way too busy to add one more thing. And so then you just agree with her and you just say like, okay, I hear you, girl. So you're just feeling totally maxed out right now. Or you might even say like, yeah, I see, like you have got a full plate. You just simply agree with her. It's a one sentence statement that says, yes, I hear you. I agree. As if you were her friend. You know, if a girlfriend ever sat down with coffee with you and she was going over her schedule and what she has on her plate, you would just say, man, girl, you've got a lot going on. You would just agree with her. You wouldn't start saying like, well, I know how you feel. You know, I feel the same way too. But I found that if I use a weekly plan sheet and I map it all out, then I don't have that feeling. You know, you would never say that to a girlfriend. You would just say like, yeah, you've got a lot going on. Okay, so you validate her, you agree. Her wall comes down. When people's walls are down, they hear you. And so I would go on to say, well, hey, let me ask you this. So after you agree, you say, yeah, I can see you are totally maxed out. So, hey, let me ask you this question. If I could teach you to make an extra, let's say $500 a month on just a few hours a week, how motivated would you be to find the time? How motivating would the financial gain be to finding the time to fit it in, a couple hours here and a couple hours there? And then she's going to respond, and she's either going to say, yeah, like very motivating. Then I would say something like, well, hey, I'm curious, what would you spend the money on if you could make an extra $500 with Mary Kay? You want her to kind of spend the money in her mind. And then I go on to say, like, do you mind if I share just some averages of what we see in our business? On average, a consultant on our average consultants hold about one party a week. That's an investment of about 5 hours of time, give or take. And although we can't really guarantee profits because you're going to be building your own business, on average, you would profit right around $500 a month if you're consistently holding one party a week, with a chance to actually earn a lot more than that. But just conservatively, about $500 a month. So what if you could invest 5 hours a week to make that extra $500 to spend it on, and then you repeat what she said she wanted to spend it on? How motivating would that be to find the time? And if it's motivating, then you continue on with the conversation. But if it's not motivating, then I ask the question, I'm like, okay, well, what's more motivating about this opportunity than the money? Because some people, although in my experience, it's in the minority, they're not as motivated by the money. But usually the majority of people you talk to, that idea of making an extra $500 a month is very attractive. But if it's not, you want to find out, well, what's more motivating about this opportunity than the extra income? Okay, so that would be how I would overcome the objection, or have a conversation about the objection of I don't have enough time. You validate first and just agree. And then, hey, let me ask you this. Like, if I could teach you to make an extra $500 a month, how motivating would that be to find the time? A couple hours here, a couple hours there. Okay. So that's an example of validating someone when overcoming objections. Okay, let me wrap it up, you guys, because I know everybody's got a well-designed day, and you designed an hour for me. I'm taking more than that. So, okay, some general statements. Okay, so these statements that I'm about to share with you are when I sense that the moment is about to happen, or the moment could happen. Oh, distracted mind, squirrel. So that comes with a lot of intuition, but sometimes it's a pause. Sometimes it's not knowing maybe what to say next because you've already overcome some objections. There's always a moment in the conversation. And so don't miss that moment, because in that moment, sometimes you just come in with like a statement that could possibly motivate her to be like, yes, let's do it. Okay. And it's an art, not a science, okay? It's just got to feel to it. It's intuition that you develop after talking to lots of people. And it works best when you're in person, of course, because you guys, eye contact and body language and tone of your voice are so important when sharing the opportunity. Two people could say the exact same words, but if they say them differently, with a different tone, with different facial expressions, with different body language, they can be received in completely opposite ways. Okay. Sometimes I'll just say very simply, like, you should just go for this. Like, girl, go for it. Like, I know you're super busy, and you don't see where you can fit it in, but why not just see if it's for you? Because if it's not, you can scratch this off your list of things to do in life and move on. You're not getting yourself into something that you couldn't get yourself out of. So, like, why not go for it? Okay, so you're just asking her, like, just go for it. You're encouraging her like a friend, like a cheerleader. You're just like coaching her and cheering her on, like, just go for it. And sometimes people need that, like, just do it. Just do it, girl. You've got this. Okay, so simply just encouraging her and being her cheerleader. With some people who you really like see as leaders, and like you sense that they really have it, I would say something like, you know what? I just want to be your friend and I want to work with you. Like, I can tell you're a leader and you've been successful at, maybe talk about where she's succeeded in her life based on the conversation you've had. I've seen you've been successful in your life. I think you would soar in Mary Kay. Like, women like you just soar in a business like this. Like, are you willing to give it a shot? I would love to work with you. Okay, so sometimes I share that. Sometimes if someone's really overthinking it, like way over analyzing it, making it this big life decision, sometimes you just need to call that out. in a butterfly sort of way and just say like, girl, you were like way overthinking this, okay? And we're having paralysis by analysis here. Okay, so you can say that to people that you've built a rapport with, that you have trust with, and you want to use a certain tone of voice that kind of makes light of it. You know, you are having paralysis by analysis, and you're making this into a bigger decision than it has to be. You are not getting married to Mary Kay, I promise you. This is just like the first date. If you don't like how it goes, you don't have to call us back. This is just a casual date. You can dump it later if it doesn't work out. You're not getting yourself into something you couldn't get yourself out of if you wanted to or needed to. So just call it out if they're overanalyzing it. All right. So those would be some things I would say to open the relationship with a brand new consultant. So we're over time. I love you guys. Have a powerful day. I will see you next Tuesday.